Hello, I am Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland Tanner.
And welcome to the 905er. The last few weeks have been tumultuous for Hamilton. Numerous headline events have driven a wedge between community organizers and city leadership. Events like the violence in J.C. Beemer Park over tent encampments, and things like the Stop Sprawl HamONT victory in preserving the urban boundary at City Council, while not directly tied, are showing a motivated grassroots movement in the city to bring real progressive change to city politics. It has been a comment from me on this podcast that these events are connected to issues such as economic inequality and affordable housing. As well, it seems that the grassroots in the city have noticed this as well and are moving to take action. One organization that is trying to capture the moment is iElectHamilton. We have had them on before to discuss their organization, and a few weeks back when we recorded this episode, they had released their survey on how Hamiltonians from across the city are viewing their leadership. This comprehensive survey contained thousands of responses unprompted from people, as well as it was free from big money that funded the project. The result was an eye-opening and honest view of how Hamiltonians are viewing their leadership of the city. It wasn't all that positive. This grassroots movement, combined with the numerous other organizations around the city, shows a mobilized and influential citizenry that is eager for change and are working to make it happen. To discuss this trend and what is going on the ground in Hamilton, we invited back to the 905er Graham Crawford. Graham, as you may remember, is one of the organizers of iElectHamilton. He is an outspoken critic of the current council and is enjoying retirement in Hamilton. He joins us today to discuss the recent findings of iElectHamilton and what the recent surge in grassroots organizing means for the city, as well as what this potentially could mean for the upcoming municipal elections next year. Also, as a reminder, this episode is brought to you by South River Brewing. Please enjoy the show. Thank you, Graham Crawford, for coming back onto the 905er. This might become a repeat event as things are going. For those of you who are new to the podcast or are unaware, Graham is, of course, one of the founding members and organizers of iElectHamilton, which is a grassroots organization that's meant to promote civic change in Hamilton. And Graham, thank you for coming back onto the podcast.
Hey, thank you both. As you know, I said it last time, and I'll repeat it. I am a regular listener to the podcast, so congrats, guys, for doing stuff that's current and meaningful. And I'm really glad you invited me back.
Well, thank you. But you don't need to tell us. Tell your friends and family.
Well, I try to do that too. Yes.
You know what, Graham? Why don't you give us a bit of an update on what iElectHamilton has been up to since we last heard from you?
Yeah, sure. So it's almost exactly 6 months ago that we launched with a full-page color ad in the Spectator. Our website went live. Our resident survey went live back then. And a lot has happened in 6 months, not only with and through iElect, but also just the stuff around it with local politics in Hamilton. But we have published our first report from our iElect resident survey. Over 2,000 Hamiltonians completed our 24-question survey. We have a 65-page report that was published just over a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. And we have a second report that will be coming out. We're working in partnership with the McMaster Research Shop. A more in-depth report will be coming out next year, because in the survey, people gave us their postal codes. And that means that we can do a deep dive by neighborhood, which Mac is very interested in helping us with. But also we have over 1,000 written comments. They're going to do a deep dive on those as well. We've been to street festivals, fairs like the Binbrook Agricultural Fair, handing out flyers. We've done mainstream media advertising, CHCH News, and CHML. We ran a week-long series of ads. And lots of mainstream media coverage and social media coverage as well, including the 905er, which we're very pleased with.
Well, it's glad to hear that you're staying out of trouble as best you can. There was one reason why I really wanted to have you on the podcast was when you came out with the 2,000 answer survey report. I thought there was something very interesting happening in Hamilton because as listeners of the podcast will know, we had on Stop Sprawl HamONT, which is not directly affiliated with iElectHamilton, But we did talk about what they did, and they went out and they created their own map of spots that they thought were prime for upgrade development in the downtown area, rather than as opposed to developing on the white belt. And you guys went out and you put out this survey of just grassroots citizens saying, hey, this is what we think is our perspective on what's happening in Hamilton. And I thought that was interesting that the two of you are grassroots organized, citizens are passionate about this, about their city, about their community. And you're doing powerful things. I mean, this is 2,000 people is not a small, it's not asking a few people on a street corner. This is a sizable chunk of the city that you can extrapolate, in terms of what the city at large feels about the status quo at the moment. And, can you give us a bit of insight into that? Like, what do you think is driving this power of grassroots transformative change in Hamilton?
Well, I'd like to thank council from the bottom of my heart for encouraging it, because it is clearly their behaviors, their attitudes, their statements that have caused it and that continue to feed it almost every single day. They do something else that upsets people. Thanks for the comment about the survey. It's over 2,000 Hamiltonians, and it was a 24-question survey. This was not a, click one button A or button B. You had to invest time. And as I said, over 1,000 people wrote comments. So they invested time in this. We're pretty happy about that. And you're right, grassroots. This is all volunteer-based. No one is being paid. The Stop Sprawl people, same thing. There are other groups as well, the Hamilton Encampment Network, Defund the Police. There's all kinds of other groups who've come together. I also know for a fact, because iElect is involved in the next election, and we'd like to get voter turnout up, we'd like to get voter knowledge up, voter awareness up. There are people organizing in various wards for the campaigns. There's a lot of grassroots activity. Why? Because people are more aware. I think social media has helped, as much as there are challenges with social media and some of the sort of edgy comments and some of the crazy stuff as well. It's a great organizing tool. So people are seeing what their council is doing. They're seeing what's going on in other cities, good things that are going on in other cities. Anybody who travels, anybody who reads, anybody who watches stuff knows that things can be better. And mediocre is what we're getting fed every day in Hamilton, by and large, by almost every member of council, not all of them. And we're sick and tired of it. And it crosses all age groups and all wards. This is not just centralized to the downtown wards and the sort of 25 to 45 age group. It's absolutely not. It's widespread, and I think council knows that.
And I mean, let's talk about the kind of reaction that you've been getting from council since iElect kind of announced itself 6 months ago. Well, not just from council, but from some of the people we might consider kind of the old guard, if you like. What's that been like? Describe for our listeners some of the things that have been said about you.
Well, let me start with our peerless leader, Fred Heisenberger. The mayor was on CHML, and one of the things this is after we had produced a video about Sewergate, and he was on and asked about it, and he said we were kind of a shady organization, weren't sure where our funding came from. We're completely transparent. We're volunteers. We have 3 directors. We're registered not-for-profit. Our funding comes from individuals. We have donations as low as $20 from all over the city. So why the mayor felt a need to cast aspersions on us as some dark and mysterious group, and where is their money coming from? Let me assure the mayor, there are plenty of groups he should be worried about in terms of where their funding comes from. And some of them do big surveys, and some of them are funded by people who have literally $1 billion on the line. And that's being discussed in council. And that's called the ward boundary expansion. He should maybe dig a little deeper on that, but to take a shot at a bunch of grassroots volunteers, all ages, all people, all wards, giving $20, $50, hundreds of dollars, stop beating up on us. We're trying to get the word out to people. I think he's afraid. There are also some trolls out there. There are always trolls. You guys get them. Everybody does. Some of them, though, some of the trolling comes from people who should know better, whose names we know. And I'm not going to, share their names because I don't want to give them any more publicity. That's what they're seeking. But that's all they do is criticize.
It's phenomenally familiar from my experience in Burlington in 2018, and there was a similar kind of grassroots movement against the incumbent council at the time, and their reaction to it every step of the way was, like you say, kind of a gift to the people who were opposing them, because it was so hostile. And it's that sense of kind of entitlement of how dare you criticize us that always blows me away by elected officials, and it's kind of ultimately kind of amateurish when it comes from politicians as well. It's like, the last thing you do is turn your opponents into martyrs, by sort of throwing mud at them. You're the big guy, you're punching down, don't do it.
Well, it's a huge point, and all you have to do is look at the most recent puff piece by Scott Radley in the Hamilton Spectator about Councillor Sam Marula, where Marula, who is on his way out, and he's been telling us that for almost four years now, that he's retiring, and he loves to sort of remind us that he's independently wealthy, which he states in the Spectator. But one of the things he does is he says, well, where are the qualified people who are going to run in the coming election, given all the challenges that and criticisms that get thrown at councillors via social media right now? And he said, nobody thanks us anymore. I was like, really? I didn't think that was your job. I mean, obviously, everybody likes to be thanked for the hard work they do. But if they're not thanking you, you might want to turn the mirror on yourself and not us and say, well, what am I not doing that I either was doing before or that now people expect me to do? There is more information out there. People are better read. They understand the issues. They understand the connectivity between issues. And so they ask better questions. They have higher demands. And our council is not delivering. And so they blame us. It's Lloyd Ferguson who took a shot at the Stop Sprawl people because he claimed that he'd heard there was some, like, the dark arts of the internet was being used to get 90% of respondents to vote a certain way. I mean, it's called MailChimp. It's email, for goodness sake. This is not the dark arts, Lloyd, but he literally said on TVO, I'm looking into it.
Well, isn't it the problem with, I guess, modern politics and the 21st century use of social media is that, yeah, social media can be a bad thing, but when you don't understand how it's used, when you don't understand the technology, everything's the dark arts, right? Everything is the boogeyman around the corner. I wanted to just make a comment about that. Your point about being besmirched, the Stop Sprawl people, your organization being besmirched by the powers that be, or to say we're not getting enough credit or enough thanks. You get the thanks after the job is done, in my opinion. When you're this is me editorializing entirely. When you're in politics, you get elected to a position, whether it's city council, mayor, MPP, MP, or prime minister. You are at the service of the people. We get to criticize every decision that you make. When you make a good one, we applaud you. Congratulations, keep it up. When you trip and fall and you make a bad decision, yeah, we are. And I don't like throwing this around because I think it's thrown around but too much by people who don't understand it. But we do have a freedom of speech to do exactly this, to criticize our elected officials and hold them to account and say, I don't like the decision that you're making. Explain it to me better, get me on board. But from what I'm seeing, I'm not liking what you're doing. And we have every right to hold the powers that be to account, whether it's through this podcast or whether it's through your organizations such as yourself or any of the other numerous grassroots that are popping up. The question I would ask if I was a counselor is, why are all these groups showing up? Why are all these groups forming under our term? These aren't long-term, they're always there, they're always in the background. Okay, you're always making noise. But all these groups just seem to form on their watch. And to me, if I was a city councilor, I'd be like, why is that happening? What's going on there?
Well, I think you raised the key point. And that is where did we all come from all of a sudden? I mean, there's always been grassroots organizing, of course. But you're right, there's more of it now. And therefore, there's greater criticism of council, but there's also greater criticism in defensive behaviors by council. One of the grassroots organizations that's been dragged through the mud is the organization, the Hamilton Encampment Support Network. Councillor Jason Farr attacks them all the time. He attacks their legal counsel all the time. He's not solving a problem, he's moving a problem. He bulldozes encampments. He ensures that it happens. He enlists the resources of the bylaw enforcement, but also the Hamilton Police Service. He's just been appointed to the Hamilton Police Services Board, and he's already said publicly he's going to make sure that the police do enforcement. That's not his role. He's not supposed to tell the cops what to do. He's supposed to monitor it.
That's actually, I'm sure that's quite illegal. Ford suggested the same thing a couple of years ago. I mean, it's like, hopefully the police say, no, you can't do that.
It's because they keep doing stuff that is inappropriate, that upsets people, that shows a lack of compassion, a lack of competence. We have an entertainment district deal in downtown Hamilton that takes 3 of our centers, so the concert hall, the convention center, and the arena, and there's a secret deal. And it's literally secret. This isn't my opinion. You cannot get a copy of the deal. It's being kept secret. Part of that deal also includes the transfer of 3 city properties. But we don't know how much the proponents paid for it, because this was one organization. We don't know what that land was worth. There's no estimated value that's being shared with us. So day after day after day, we have a councillor who wanted to dump more sewage. And this is in the face of Sewergate. Let's actually dump more sewage. This is Lloyd Ferguson. Because of poor building standards, there are houses up on the West Mountain that are flushing their toilets literally into creeks. This has been happening for decades. It's not a secret. Ferguson's idea is to stop basement flooding. We need to allow them to dump more sewage into the creek. This in the face of Sewergate, climate emergency, environmental protection, the Ministry of the Environment levying fines and work orders to the city of Hamilton. And this is the kind of reaction we get from council. The old style of councillors who did stuff, wanted to be thanked, drove around like kings, mostly, some queens, but mostly kings, wanting to have their back patted because they were just so fabulous. Those days are over unless you deliver. And that's more than just potholes and blue boxes and getting building permits through faster. We expect more. We have a higher standard, in my opinion.
On that note, I mean, you kind of laid a lot of stuff on city council. I kind of wanted to switch to the Ward 5 by-election, and people can't see it, but I am holding up air quotes at the moment.
And they can't see me smile, and I'm smiling at your air quotes.
What you know what? Rather than me editorializing the question, give us your thoughts on how that whole process unfolded.
Sure. Well, iElect took a position on that, and our position was that we felt a by-election was warranted. There is a year left. An election could have been pulled together much faster than city clerk said it could be. It's been done by many other municipalities. This isn't, and it's not like it's a brand new concept. We do elections every 4 years, and so we have methods and systems in place. And sure, you got to organize them. I get that. But the suggestion this was going to take months and months and months was nonsense. So we said it should be a by-election. Council said, no, we want to do an appointment. So as you know, they put out a call. Anybody can put their name forward, and 20 odd people did, and they made 5-minute presentations to council. Look, there was no secret that there were favorites. Larry Deaney was a favorite. That's not his doing, but he was definitely a favorite. As it turns out, Russ Powers was also a favorite. There were other delegates, though. I watched them all. there were a lot of very good residents who put forward good cases, and they never stood a chance, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, many others. What I will say, though, was in my opinion, based on what I saw, that vote did not go down the way a lot of the old guard thought it was going to go down. Again, it's not Larry Deaney's fault, but his name was the one that the old guard wanted. And of course, they voted accordingly. There were 6 votes for Larry Deaney, and you can absolutely say the old guard voted for Larry. And the rest of council didn't. So Russ Powers was selected. Russ, I don't think Russ is going to do any harm, but the point is it was an appointment, not an election. So now Russ, who lives in Dundas, is going to be representing the residents of Ward 5 for 1 year.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask, because, yeah, he doesn't live in the ward. He was a councillor in Dundas. That's quite astonishing in and of itself. So with the Larry Deaney situation, I took a quick look at the vote and I noticed that, well, Terry Whitehead wasn't there. I'm not sure. I mean, he's technically back now. And Judy Partridge, who you might have thought would be, well, as a former Liberal candidate, might have supported a former Liberal MP. I forget now. She sort of jumped ship and voted for Russ Powers. I mean, is this a case of some councillors getting cold feet and thinking, well, maybe we do have to sort of change our approach here?
Well, I wish I could conclude that it was an awakening of certain members of council. I'm not quite there yet. I mean, after all, Russ Powers is a member of parliament. He was a Liberal member of parliament as well as a councillor. He's been a Liberal, lifelong Liberal. So, and so has Larry. So in that sense, it's a wash, I think. I don't think the vote was driven by that. I think the vote was in part driven by the word was out that Russ does not support urban boundary expansion. And while Larry hasn't declared, look, it's accurate to say Larry is a registered lobbyist at the city of Hamilton. I mean, he's literally registered. He has clients who, may be affected by that decision, some of them. He has a varied client list. I think that played into it. I don't know that for a fact, by the way, but it seems to me, because it was sort of raised at the beginning of that discussion, when they started to hear the delegates, that the delegate, the appointee, should not have a vote today on urban boundary expansion. That looks like that's changed because they've shifted up when the person was sworn in. They moved it up. So now Russ Powers has literally been sworn in. He wasn't supposed to be sworn in at this point. So one question is, well, what was that all about? And so is council changing? By the way, the reason I believe Terry Whitehead wasn't there is because even though he is back, he is only back for 2 days. And I did watch his return last week, and he was true to form at a couple of meetings, sort of quite aggressive in his behavior. I mean, I don't want to hurt the guy if he's hurting, and he clearly is. And he said so, and he talked to council before they went in camera and voted on the Integrity Commissioner's findings and recommendations. And they voted against Terry. So he's being docked 30 days pay, and it's about $8,500. He can no longer speak to staff below the level of general manager, and he can no longer chair or be vice chair on any committees. Basically, so what's left? Blue boxes and potholes, I guess, on the 2 days that you're back at work and not shouting at people. It's a mess, to be honest. It's a mess.
So I always thought, like, when a by-election, they're kind of opportunities for spontaneous responses from the public. When we see at the provincial or the federal level, when there's a by-election, it's generally a chance for the public to kind of say, this is what we think of how the government of the day is doing their job. Stay the course, or we need to change, or whatever have you. Would you have thought that the Ward 5, if there was a Ward 5 by-election, that the council would have had to have listened directly from people, and in terms of what they thought the behavior was in general, and really hear from people, like, this is what we want for the boundary expansion. This is what we think of Sewergate. This is what we think of your conduct as a whole on city council. Because, I mean, you think about those town halls, it's kind of it's an open mic night.
Yeah, the by-election has two sides to it, as many things do. Double-edged sword. It allows the people of Ward 5 to express to cast their vote, therefore to express their opinion, and to elect someone who would have to run again in October of next year. So that's the good news. It would be democratic. The people of Ward 5 would have cast their votes, and no one else would have been able to cast their vote. It's only if you live in Ward 5. The other side, though, of that sword is it means you have to mount a campaign quickly, which means you have to raise money. None of this is cheap. I mean, it may be cheap to some people if you have lots of backers, but even then, you can only give so much money. But you've got to pull a campaign together, get that team working. And it may give an unfair advantage to those who weren't ready, but who were thinking about running next October. They can still run, of course, but now they're running against an incumbent. So on the other hand, surely democracy should trump all of those considerations, raising money, having an election campaign team, and so on. That isn't what council decided to do. And I really do question why. There were some councillors who felt a by-election was the most appropriate thing to do. They were in the minority, and I think council just wanted to kind of control this to the best of their ability, which I think is exactly what they did. Except, as I said earlier, I think that vote went a little differently than they thought it was going to go. But remember, at the end of the day, Russ Powers, is in his 70s. He's been in politics for many, many, many decades. He's well known. Will he be the voice of Ward 5? I mean, I guess technically that's what he is, the job he's just been given. But really, I don't know.
Well, I thought there was an interesting statement. I think I read in the Spectator. There was an interview about why they're not calling a by-election. And the decision was that this decision was too important, or the job is too complex to just let anybody apply for it. And I thought, isn't that essentially what we do every election? Like across the board, municipal, federal, provincial, literally anyone can run. You just have to organize yourself and work hard at it. But literally anyone can run and in theory get elected. That's the premise of a democracy.
Well, and it's really, I mean, if you're well enough organized to run an election and get elected, you're well enough organized to be a councillor.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, council writes their own jokes here. I mean, it's just outrageous that, the person wouldn't have the kind of experience and knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all you have to do is look around that table and see how ludicrous that statement is. When those people first got elected, what were their credentials? And despite what Judy Partridge says, this is an executive level position. None of them were executives, except maybe Lloyd Ferguson.
It's that pomposity, above all in more municipal politics and far beyond Hamilton. It's that pomposity and self-regard that drives me potty. It's like, you are public servants. You serve the public, as Joel said, at the pleasure of the public. When you see that arrogance coming in, which, I think Hamilton's got a particularly bad case, but it's far from only a Hamilton problem. It's time for a change.
Really, it's, and we keep seeing the average declaring competence and excellence. We have councillors who I think their self-opinion is much higher than their behaviour and credentials should permit. But that's the way it works. That's the way our democracy works. And that's why one of the reasons why I think iElect is so focused on the next election is because we want not just create awareness that the election is coming, not just that we want greater voter turnout, but we want voters to make knowledgeable decisions. So that is why we're helping. This survey, all the results, the report is being made available to everyone, including candidates. Not just incumbents and not just the general public, but candidates. So if I was running in a ward, I'm not, I would say, read the report, learn what the people in the ward said, and then start your campaign by verifying, is that widespread? How widespread is it? how upset are they based on that report? There's lots of food for thought in the survey from iElect.
So we've got a few minutes left here before we come up to our kind of 40 minutes. So, I mean, obviously, you're in the business of kind of encouraging people to get into this process. I mean, is iElect actively, are you aware of candidates? Are you encouraging candidates or funding them? Or, I mean, are you yourself thinking of running? Is that something you thought about? Or,
Oh, well, what I can tell you is I run from office, not for office. No, I have absolutely no intention of running and never have. I retired 16 years ago by design, and I want it to stay that way. So personally, no. In terms of iElect, we have no party affiliation. There is no slate of candidates that we're putting together, and we will not be endorsing any candidates. What we are doing is providing information for candidates. And of course, because we're a grassroots organization with contacts throughout the city, people are getting in touch with us who are thinking about running. So we're providing them with all the information we have. Certainly, we've met with people who want to talk about, should I run? Should I not run? What do you think? But that's not the same as endorsing them. It's just that, we would be doing that even if iElect didn't exist. Those coffees would still be happening. But we are aware of candidates in various wards who are thinking about running. We actually are also aware of people who are going to run. Whether they choose to take the plunge, raise the money, put the team together, and put their life on pause and run a campaign for 6 months is up to them. But I will say this: we're encouraged by the people that we have that have reached out to us and that we have spoken with who say that they want to run. I would say caliber of people who are doing that is good. In fact, it's very good. That goes for mayor as well. Look, I think we're going to have good candidates in the next election. What happens, how people vote, to be determined. What I also can say, though, is we have kind of like Chad Collins is no longer at council. Chad was the shadow mayor, according to pretty much everybody I ever talked to. He's not there anymore. His buddy Marula, his sidekick, who they spent most of their time talking to each other during delegations by the public, is leaving. As I mentioned in the Scott Radley column, Sam said, as an independently wealthy, exceptional councillor, he's retiring. Thanks for your feedback.
Is Terry Whitehead stepping down as well? Or is he planning?
Terry is on record at the moment of saying that he's a fighter and that he plans to run. To be fair to Terry, he doesn't look well and he doesn't sound well. Terry admits that he has challenges, both physiological challenges, health challenges, but also mental health challenges. And Terry has said that. This isn't, I'm not picking on the guy. I don't know what he's going to do, but I will say this. He looks like he's suffering. And if he can't come back for more than 2 days a week after being off for almost a year, then I would say maybe it's time for Terry to look after himself and his family and step down. But that's his choice. I hear all kinds of things about other councillors who are not running, say they're not running. We may have quite a different look around that council table, with or without iElect. And I hope with iElect, we're going to trigger even more change.
And with the mayoral role, are there any names you're in the position you could mention about who might run? The thing that often happens, well, again, I've seen this happen, is I've seen people be encouraged to run deliberately as a way of splitting votes, so that the incumbent or the incumbent's favourite candidate could stay in office. Is that a fear? And again, do you think there will be sort of one person who will emerge as a focus of change for the mayor position?
Well, I don't know for sure. I think you're absolutely right, though, that people often get tricked into running in order to split a vote. It does happen. It is a strategy. And obviously only incumbents do that usually, but not always. Someone who's been a guest on your show, Laura Babcock, who also has a podcast and a YouTube video, The O Show, she had Catherine McKenna on. And there were plenty of rumors that Catherine McKenna should maybe run for mayor of Hamilton because she's no longer in the Trudeau cabinet. And she said emphatically on the show, 100% I am not running for mayor. However, I think you should think about Keenan Loomis, who is the head of the Chamber of Commerce. Keenan has not come out and said absolutely not. He hasn't either. Neither has he come out and said absolutely yes. I think he's
look like a true politician.
Well, exactly. It's like, you tell me. I don't need to tell you. You tell me you want me. But you know what? Kidding aside, we need some fresh faces. I really hope this doesn't turn into the Bob and Fred show, Bob Bertina and Fred Eisenberger. It's time both of them said goodbye, collected their pensions, went home, and did whatever it is they do at home. We need a new, fresh mayor. I'm not unhappy with the thought of Keenan Loomis running for mayor. I will declare that personally. That's just a personal opinion. It's not an iElect opinion. That's a personal opinion.
Well, I see we're coming up on the 40-minute mark, so I guess we're going to leave that as the final note for the episode. So thank you very much, Graham, for coming on and sharing what's been new with iElectHamilton. It sounds like the next year is going to be a very momentous one for Hamilton at all levels of government. So thank you for giving us an insight, and we'll be sure to probably have you on for some point in the future again.
Thank you. If I can just close, guys, by saying iElectHamilton.ca. Go to our website, check it out. You can still complete our survey, by the way. It's live, and the reason it's still live is because we're doing the MAC study as well next year. So we're still taking in data. So guys, thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.